This is a quick lesson in 3D Studio Max, how to add yourself a texture to a surface. If you're going to do a detailed object like a character or a building, you're going to need to use a UVW unwrap. But if you want a basic flat surface with a texture on it, this is how we're going to do it. So this is following on from the surface model tutorial we did a little while back, which is on the list. If you create yourself a plane, meaning it's a surface, I'm going to go for a darker colour so we can see the polygons that are on there. If I right click and go to edged faces, I can see that I've got that many polygons on there. If you go to your modifier, your second option, I can set this so it's not just at 4 polygons. I'm going to go much higher and go to 40. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I can control not just the colour, I want to put a material on it, so I'm going to put a picture on there. Now I want a sandy desert scene. So what I'm going to do is bring up my material editor. To do that I need to press M on my keyboard. This brings up my slate material editor. Now it's down to preference on how this works. If you're a fan of using blueprints, this will work really well. I, however, quite like the compact modeler. I like seeing my textures applied to my object by clicking, dragging and dropping, and I just like working with it as a list rather than a blueprint. I guess it stops me going into too much detail. But that grey is now on the sphere. That's called a diffuse colour, so if I click on the diffuse colour I can make sure that it's changing. So I've got a yellow on there now. You've also got specular, which is the light that lands on the object. Glossiness, meaning how much light it kicks back and how the surface is finished, and you can affect how that changes, and it gives you a little graph just to show how that looks. Okay, so that's a simple colour on an object, so that's how you can give yourself a custom colour. Use the diffuse one. Now, I want to put a picture on it. So it's actually by the way 3D Max does it is it asks for a map, and at the bottom you've got this little option for map drop down. Just to cut a corner, I'm going to click on the little button next to the word diffuse. There's a little button there, and it says you've got no maps on it yet, and I want to put my map as a picture. So I'm going to click on that little button. All of these options are preloaded that 3D Max have, so you could have a gradient map, you could have a dent, you could have noise. I'm going to go for my own custom map. I've got a picture of sand that I've downloaded that I want to put on it. So go to bitmap. Every time 3D Max uses bitmap, it refers to it being your own image, your own custom thing, not a preset off the list. So I'm going to hit bitmap. I've preloaded my sand image at the bottom there, so that's what my sand looks like, and I'm going to press OK. Now that wraps it around the sphere. You should be able to see it on there, but sometimes the 3D Max doesn't allow it because it takes a little bit more render power. So if you've got a rubbish computer like me, it might take a bit more render power. But there is this little button here with a little ball in it that says Show Map in Viewport. So when you press it, you can see it. If you look up at the top right, you may have to scroll your nav bar if it doesn't quite fit on your screen, but I'm going to click the teapot with a lightning strike, which is render, and it will render off my picture with an image on it. You can see I've got a few watermarks on there. I didn't realise that when I downloaded it. Not to worry. So I'm going to now put the displacement map on it. So I'm going to go to my modifier, which is the second option, hit the modifier list. It's in alphabetical order, so I'm going to click on displace. Gives me my list of parameters, and I'm just looking for it says bitmap. I'm going to put my own custom image on it. Go to my quick access, and I know I've got an image saved somewhere, which is my displacement map, which is map image. Press OK. You won't see it because it's a displacement, so it's going to go bumpy, light and dark. Turn the strength up, and now I've got some sand dunes on there. Okay, so some comments from the previous video said it's all a bit flaky and all looks a little bit low poly. When you get too close, it goes all grainy. Okay, that understood. But when I get too close, I'm looking at a JPEG that's not high enough resolution, so it's best if you take your own pictures or get a really high res one. The flakiness of the polygons means there's not enough on there. So if I go to plane, you can either up the number of them so there's more points for it to bend from, or, and the way I like to do it, is just look at your modifier list and give it the modifier of smoothing it. Okay, so the smooth we're going to look for is turbo smooth. It very quickly just gives you a really quick look at how it would look if it's a little bit more fluid. It does make your poly count really high, so you might turn edge faces off to see how it looks. But then you have a world that looks a little bit more lumpy. Now, excusing the watermark on the picture, let's see what that looks like. You now have an image of what could be a game environment of a landscape with a picture on it, with your own custom displacement map and a bump on it. If you don't know what the displacement map is, look at the displacement map video on the surface modelling video that I've got a little bit earlier on. give it a go.